Bene, allora, ciao a tutti e benvenuti a ricominciare. Sì, sì, sì.
1, 2, 3.
Vai. Bene, ciao a tutti e benvenuti a questo incontro con Origin Protocol e Trips. Qui c'è John che viene dalla California e sta facendo un giro d'Europa per presentare il progetto. Parlerà in inglese, quindi se poi avete problemi fatemi sapere che cerchiamo un po' di tradurre e di aggiornare. E, e- e niente, insomma, cerchiamo sarà un po' tecnico come diciamo, argomento, abbiate pazienza, comunque alla fine ci saranno anche esempi un po' concreti di quello che si andrà a fare. John viene soprattutto per presentare la cosa a sviluppatori e investitori in cripto, però la cosa interessa anche gli host e chiunque lavori nel settore per un futuro non troppo lontano nel quale potrete caricare i vostri alloggi sulla blockchain. Bene, lascio la parola a John e intervenite pure alla fine, avrà delle slide con domande, siamo più che contenti di insomma, instaurare una piccola discussione perché è assolutamente fondamentale diciamo, interagire perché altrimenti è veramente difficile, insomma sono argomenti difficili per chiunque, sono cose molto nuove, un po' come se nel 95 stessimo qua a parlarvi di questa cosa che sta arrivando e si chiama internet, quindi è assolutamente incomprensibile. Quindi vai, in bocca al lupo a tutti. John, welcome.
Thank you.
Please
Not
start.
sure what you just said, but thank you for the introduction.
I won't translate Italian to English.
Yeah.
Trust me, it was cool.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Thank you all for joining us today. Definitely encourage you guys, if you have any questions, just shout it out, interrupt, no problem at all. I want to make this conversational and make sure you guys learn as much as you can and get your questions answered. I will be talking about what we're up to at Origin Protocol and going to talk a lot about the use case that Luca is working on at Trips for vacation rentals. But really excited to be here in Italy and go ahead and get started. So we at Origin are building a platform for businesses and developers to build decentralized marketplaces. And I'll talk more about what that means and why it's important to the space. So going back a little over 20 years, there was a couple of companies that started called eBay and Craigslist, which you're probably familiar with. And these two companies completely changed the way that people bought and sold goods and services by bringing them online and allowing people to buy these goods and services not just from a company, but rather from other people. And because of this, they've been termed as peer-to-peer marketplaces. And I'll talk about why that's actually not exactly true, but you'll see many other logos here. There have been many companies in the last 20 years that have adopted this so-called peer-to-peer model, and some of the biggest ones today that we know about and that we use quite frequently would be Airbnb and Uber, are usually the ones that come to mind. They're considered part of this sharing economy as well, which is something we're focused on at Origin, which is essentially the fractional usage of an asset. I have a car, I have a home, and I want to divide that up for usage amongst different people for different amounts of time. So while these claim to be peer-to-peer, they're not. Go ahead and talk about, or mention a quote here from my colleague Coleman. At Origin, we envision a day where these so-called peer-to-peer marketplaces are truly peer-to-peer and not peer-to-corporate monopoly to peer. The reality is these companies have inserted themselves into the middle of these transactions. They collect all of the user data, they silo this data, and they protect this data because this is how they monetize. This is how they charge these very high transaction fees on every single transaction on all the goods and services that pass through their network. And thankfully, with the advent of blockchain technology, you're actually able to build these systems in a way that removes this middleman and allows these two parties to connect directly with each other. Mostly these marketplaces justify these large fees for this simply just matchmaking, from bringing a buyer and a seller together. And it's our theory that this matchmaking alone does not really justify these fees, and there's a better way to do it thanks to some of these new technologies. So why is this important? Why do we want to decentralize these technologies and take some of the power away from these middlemen? The first, which we've already discussed, is to lower these fees. When you can remove these fees, which get as high as 20, 30, 40%, sometimes much higher in extreme cases, when you remove these fees, a lot can happen. Number one, you can put money into the pocket of both the buyer and the seller. The buyer can pay less, and the seller can make more. And this is very important for fostering these growing communities and allowing them to grow faster. And what happens is, as these networks gain in popularity and become more and more popular and become more of a monopoly, they're able to extract more fees. They're basically providing the same value over time, but they're collecting more and more fees. And as a buyer, even as a host on an Airbnb or as a guest, you don't really have a lot of control over this, and you don't have a lot of other options. Because this is really the largest player in the space, especially if you're a host, you can't give up on Airbnb. If they raise their fee from 10 to 12%, you just have to really accept that in order to keep your business growing. So this is usually what people think about first. When you cut out the middleman, the fees go with it, and it's very exciting for both sides of the transaction. The second is to redistribute value more fairly in these networks. So we always like to ask, what are the first Airbnb hosts or the first Uber drivers doing today, 10 years later? The truth is, they're actually probably doing the same thing that they were doing on day one. They're still driving for Uber, they're still hosting on Airbnb, but unfortunately, they're making less money than they were at the very beginning, despite the fact that they were essential in helping these networks grow and helping change the way people transact online. They didn't really benefit from this growth of this network. Who benefited? The investors, the founders, the early employees. They're making millions and billions of dollars while on the backs of these users that really helped create these networks from the beginning. And thank you to cryptocurrencies and the blockchain and these new economic models, you can actually redistribute this value much more fairly and help ensure that the early users of these platforms can actually grow and benefit from the growth and the health of these networks over time. So we kind of bucket these into the financial incentives of this new way of doing business. The other bucket is access. We want to promote free and open commerce for these types of networks. Many cities throughout the world have banned these services entirely. Many cities have regulated these services so much that it really has an effect on the consumer, on the guest. For example, in San Francisco, 50% of the listings in San Francisco on Airbnb were removed in one day. And the reason that this was possible is because Airbnb is a single point of failure. There's one company to go after. If you're the San Francisco government and you want to start collecting fees and forcing these hosts to register or whatever it may be, you can just simply go to Airbnb, which is what they did, and say, we're going to fine you for every single listing that you have up on Airbnb today that does not, if these hosts have not registered with the city, we're going to fine you Airbnb, $100, $150 every day for every listing that you have up. And if you're at Airbnb, you can't ignore this. You can't afford to pay these fines. And so you're going to comply and you're going to remove all these listings. This not only obviously hurts the hosts, but it hurts the guests. It gives them much fewer choices and they don't really have alternatives to turn to. And so whether or not you agree with the reason behind these regulations, whether or not you think it was the right thing for the government to do, it's really scary to know that it's so easy for them to go and remove all of these listings so quickly. The other, which is very important, is to promote access. We want to promote free and open commerce for these types of networks. Many cities throughout the world have banned these services entirely. Many cities have regulated these services so much that it really has an effect on the consumer, on the guest. For example, in San Francisco, 50% of the listings in San Francisco on Airbnb were removed in one day. And the reason that this was possible is because Airbnb is a single point of failure. There's one company to go after. If you're the San Francisco government and you want to start collecting fees and forcing these hosts to register or whatever it may be, you can just simply go to Airbnb, which is what they did, and say, we're going to fine you for every single listing that you have up on Airbnb today that does not, if these hosts have not registered with the city, we're going to fine you Airbnb, $100, $150 every day for every listing that you have up. And if you're at Airbnb, you can't ignore this. You can't afford to pay these fines. And so Lastly, we're very excited about the ability for these technologies to help the billions of people throughout the world that are unbanked. They don't have a credit card, they don't have a bank account, and therefore they cannot participate in these marketplaces and in these sharing economies. You need a credit card or a bank account to participate in Airbnb, for example. And although they don't have access to these traditional financial instruments, they do have access to cheap Android phones. And these Android phones are more and more being installed with cryptocurrency wallets. So we actually think that these billions of unbanked throughout the world in much smaller cities, much smaller, more rural areas, will actually be able to skip this traditional financial model, and the first marketplaces that they interact with, the first peer-to-peer marketplaces, the first sharing economies that they interact with, will actually be powered by blockchain and powered by these cryptocurrencies. So how are we approaching this at Origin? It's important to understand that we are not getting into the home sharing space ourselves. We are actually building this foundational technology layer. We are building this platform that will allow many, many different types of sharing economies or marketplaces to be built on top of them. So one of our partners, Trips, they're building the home sharing, the decentralized home sharing on top of Origin. There are other partners that are going to be building decentralized ride sharing, freelancer marketplaces like a Fiverr, educational marketplaces, all sorts of different types of peer-to-peer marketplaces. And we actually don't even know what will be built. We have some ideas, and we're excited about certain things like home sharing, vacation rentals, etc. But there are probably marketplaces that we haven't thought about today that probably aren't possible today. For example, if a business or a company wants to build a very localized home sharing company, right? Just in Italy or just even in a smaller city within a country, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for them to go raise money and build this, because when you raise money from a venture capitalist, they expect returns. They expect that this is going to have a chance at being a very large business. And the truth is that if you want to focus on a local community, you're not going to be able to create a billion-dollar business. So we're excited about what this can do to allow for these smaller, more niche communities and niche marketplaces to thrive, where something like Airbnb, they're not going to go into these small communities because they can't make enough money from it. So this is not all theory. This is actually live today. We have built a very simple proof of concept, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we went about this. But you can actually visit our marketplace today by visiting dac.originprotocol.com. And you'll see a very basic buy and sell marketplace that has identity, has reputation, and it has escrow. But there's still a ton of features that we need to continue to include in this. So we're going to be focusing on things like home sharing. So we need to build scheduling. This is actually already being built. Scheduling, how do you represent the fractional usage of these assets on the blockchain, many other very important features. But it's important to us to get this out into the world today, even if it's early, even if it's not perfect. We want to get it out there. We want people to give us feedback. And that's one of the benefits of getting involved with Origin early, is that you can actually help guide the decisions that we make when it comes to building this product. So definitely encourage you to check this out today. You can see here that there's many different types of listings. You can see a home available for rent. You can see goods available for purchase. And you can also see some freelancer style website design. One of our investors even put up his time on here. So he said, if you have a project you want to pitch me, I'll give you an hour of my time. We'll do a video call. And he did it for 5 ETH, which at the time was about $1,000 US. And within a couple of days, somebody actually bought this and pitched him. So we're excited to see what else our users add to this and what our partners add to this, this marketplace here. So how are we going about this? What is our approach to actually building this out? So like I said, we are not just building a home sharing platform. At the very bottom, at the very base, the foundation of everything we're building is a set of open source protocols. Everything we do at Origin is open source, and at the very base is a set of smart contracts built on Ethereum, the blockchain that we are building on today. So how do you represent a listing, a home listing on the blockchain? How do you represent identity on the blockchain? There's definitely some important problems that you need to solve, and we want to solve these problems in a way that everybody can benefit from, that are open for anybody to use and to leverage. On top of this, we're building developer tools. Not a lot of developers know what a smart contract is or how to write a safe, secure smart contract. They don't know Solidity, which is the programming language used to write these smart contracts on Ethereum. But what they do know is JavaScript. It's very commonly known programming language. Most developers know how to use this. They use it all the time. And so we want to put the power of the blockchain in the hands of these developers so that they can actually quickly go to market, quickly build these marketplaces, and not need to understand all the complexities of the blockchain, but rather just quickly use JavaScript calls to build a simple marketplace. We're also working on a white label product. Even if you don't know JavaScript, you're not really a developer, or you just want a better starting point, we're going to make it very easy for you to build one of these marketplaces with a few clicks of your mouse. So a lot of people are familiar with WordPress. It allows you to quickly create a blog. You don't need to know how to code. You just click a few buttons and you create a WordPress powered blog. It's a very similar idea. And so we're going to be creating a marketplace creator that anybody can go in and build one of these marketplaces. The idea here is, if you want to create a marketplace, does it make sense for you to build all of the things that are common to all marketplaces? Build your own identity system, your own reputation system, your own escrow system. We don't think it does. We want you to leverage what we're building for these problems, and instead focus your time, your energy, your resources on what is core to your business, what is specific to your marketplace. Things like attracting your users, onboarding your users, getting them to put listings on your marketplace, getting your users to purchase these listings, etc. So it will allow developers and businesses to actually go to market much more quickly, and we're really excited about being able to provide this infrastructure for these businesses and these developers. And lastly, we've built our dApp. What we just showed in the last slide, we've built an application on top of our own infrastructure, on top of our own platform, to show the community what's possible, to get people starting to think about how they, what they want out of this type of platform. And currently today, it will aggregate all of the listings from all of our partners and create this meta marketplace. But the idea is we just want to show and put on display what's possible and allow people to interact with this application and with this new technology. Any questions so far? All right. Yeah?
100% open source.
100% open source, very important. Everything we do is open source at Origin. It's very exciting because it allows you to attract all sorts of people. We've actually been very successful at hiring some of our developers who just started off interested in what we were doing, contributing to the project, not because we're paying them, but because they're really excited about this technology and about this vision and about this mission. And a few of these developers, we really liked what they were up to, and we ended up hiring them for full-time roles. So there's, again, any project, if they want to take what we're doing and take pieces of it and apply it to their own project, if they want to, create their own marketplace using what we're doing today, it's all available to do so. And the beauty is they don't need to ask permission. It's out there. Anybody can do it without our permission. And that's the beauty of open source. So one of the most fundamental things you need to solve in this world of blockchain is identity. If I want to rent somebody's house on trips, I want to understand who this person is, right? Is this a real person? Is this some sort of scam, or is this fraud? So in order to solve this, we have chosen to adopt an open source standard called ERC 725. It is the identity standard for Ethereum that was proposed by a gentleman named Fabian Vogelsteller. He was the creator of the ERC20 standard, which is what most tokens that you've heard of today is actually based on. It's based on this ERC20 standard. So we're working with Fabian. He's working with us to help define this standard and get it out there into the wild. And so how does this work? The way it works is you have an Ethereum wallet address. You can see it up here on the right, top right of this screenshot here. And you can attach to this Ethereum wallet address different things. So for example, phone number, email, Twitter account, Facebook account, Airbnb profile. And what you're able to do is basically prove with code, cryptographically prove that the owner of this wallet also owns and controls this phone number, this email address, etc. So to put it in perspective, Airbnb is today who solves this for the home sharing space. If you want to trust, the other person on the end of this Airbnb transaction, you rely on Airbnb. You trust Airbnb that they have vetted the person on the other end. And it's very important to do this regardless of blockchain or not. But the benefit of doing it in an open way, doing it on the blockchain with this approach, is that you don't need to trust this person. You can just trust the code. You can trust the math, essentially. It also gives the user optionality. If they, for example, only want one trusted party to perform these what are called attestations, they have the choice. And we see this, these are just a few examples, but there's many, many other examples that we can see in the future depending on the type of marketplace. So one example would be for home sharing. If we want to prove that this person actually owns this house, right? Or actually, has the ability to rent out this house, we can send them a postcard. This postcard will have a code on it. They get the postcard in their mailbox. Then they go to Origin and they type in this code, and now we can say, okay, this person has control, at least of this mailbox. You can imagine in the future, the DMV could, prove that you own this driver's license or whatever the case may be, and depending on the marketplace, there will be different types of attestations. So again, it's all open source, and one of the biggest benefits of this is you actually own this. You own your identity. So unlike something like Facebook, where you can connect to many different services using Facebook, they own your data. They own your profile. You have no control over how they use it. And as you've seen, they end up leaking a lot of this data. Hackers got into this data and are exploiting this data. So it's really important to us that the people leveraging these services have control over their identity, have control over their data. The other really interesting benefit is what we call shared network effects. So people are generally familiar with network effects. For example, with Facebook, the more people that join Facebook, the more beneficial it is to every user. Everybody gets more value out of Facebook if all of their friends and all of their family join. So with Origin, we're excited about shared network effects. So maybe my first Origin-powered marketplace that I use is Trips. I go and I sign up with Trips. I fill out my identity profile, this ERC725 profile, and now you can tell, okay, he has this Twitter account, etc. And now I want to go to another Origin-powered marketplace, like a ride-sharing marketplace. I don't need to go and redo this process. I don't need to create a new account on this ride-sharing platform. I can actually just leverage the identity I've already filled out and bring it. It's now portable to all Origin-powered marketplaces. And this will make it much better on the user. They don't have to sign up a ton of different times. They don't have to worry about their data being held on all these different databases for all of these different services. They can control access to their identity and give permission to whichever service they would like to use to leverage this identity. And thank you to this standard. This actually extends outside of Origin as well. So we've actually created the ERC725 Alliance. alongside 16 other founding members, including some pretty big names, Status and Polymath. And what this means is now if I've signed up for trips, signed up for an origin-powered marketplace, this identity is now portable outside of origin-powered marketplaces. I can use this identity for any other project that has adopted this ERC 725 standard. So if you want to learn more about the Alliance, you can go to erc725alliance.org. But we're really excited about giving the power back to the people and allowing them to control their data and their privacy. Now, there are many pieces in order to give a user a similar experience to what they're used to when they go to an Airbnb or some other sharing economy. They need to have a very similar experience. People will not use these services just because they're decentralized or just because they're built on the blockchain. They're going to use them because they're a good service and they add value and it's a good experience. So we know that it needs to be at least as good as Airbnb and hopefully even better. So one of the things that we've built is a chat system. So if I'm going to rent a home on Trips, I want to be able to talk to the host. I want to be able to ask them some questions, and I want them to be able to tell me, how I can check in, what I need to know, where I should travel in that city, etc. So we have built a chat system, but the difference here is that this chat system is, again, fully decentralized. It is actually a peer-to-peer system. It's fully encrypted, it's fully secure, and unlike even something like WhatsApp or Apple, they're encrypted, yes, but there's a server sitting in the middle, and this server contains all this data, and it's really truly not an actual peer-to-peer system. So we have created this chat system, and one of the unique features of this, which is very important for a marketplace, is that it allows for a third party to arbitrate. So if I rent a home from somebody and I have some problem with my stay there, and I don't want to pay the full price or whatever the case may be, I can enter into a dispute. And now with the way this chat system works, a third party arbitrator can come in once we've entered into a dispute, and they can see the chat history. They can see what we've talked about. They can see the transaction history, and that way they can have all the information they need to make a judgment one way or the other. Again, this is all open source. This isn't something we charge for or monetize, and other projects are already interested in using this for their companies, their businesses, their projects, and we encourage everybody to go in and use it and help us improve it over time. One of the other things that we're working on right now that will be released pretty soon as well is a mobile wallet. And what this mobile wallet does is it does two things. Number one, it allows you to sign transactions. And I'll talk a little bit more about what this means. But today, one of the unfortunate things about these decentralized applications built on the blockchain is that there's a lot of friction. It's not nearly as easy today as it is to use something like Airbnb. And there are a lot of smart people working on solving these problems. Today, one of the main requirements to use one of these applications is you need a browser extension called MetaMask. And essentially what this browser extension does is it connects the web application in your browser that you're using to the blockchain. But not a lot of people know how to use a browser extension. They don't know what it is, and they're very uncomfortable dealing with the private keys and all the signatures that are required to use something like MetaMask. So what we've built is a mobile wallet that makes it very simple. You go to a website, and instead of needing this browser extension, the website will just show you a QR code. You pull out your phone, you pull out your camera, it automatically will scan it, and it'll bring you to this mobile wallet application. And from this application, you can then say, yes, I give permission to send this money to this person. I give permission to book this listing or to accept an offer or whatever the case may be. And the second thing that it does is it allows for you to get notified. So today, without this mobile wallet, we do have this chat system, but there's no easy way of notifying you that somebody has sent you a message. Sure, we could, send you a text message or an email, but again, we value your privacy. We don't want this to be the only way to get a hold of you. So while we will probably offer these in the future as an option, it's really important to us to give you the power of being able to go through these transactions without giving up your phone number or email address if you don't want to do that, and instead just using this mobile application to sign these transactions and accept offers and buy and purchase listings. So this will be coming out soon. I'll tell you a little bit more about who is building all this amazing stuff. There's a really incredible team behind it that we're really excited about. So one final thing here as far as us trying to help make it much easier for a user to leverage these applications is what we're calling sponsored gas. The idea here is every time you interact with the blockchain, if you want to add a listing for your home on Trips, if you want to buy some sort of good or service off of Origin, there is a cost, what is called a gas fee. So this fee actually goes to the miner of the blockchain and it keeps it secure, but it's not free. And we understand that people don't want to pay every time they want to book a listing or something like leaving a review. We want our early users to leave reviews for all of these listings, but it's very hard to convince somebody to leave a review if they have to pay 10 cents or 20 cents to do this. So there's a number of different ways you can address this. One way is, which we're going to be doing, is to use our token. So we're actually going to reimburse the users for this cost using our token, and we'll probably even give them a little bit extra on top because we want to incentivize them to do these very important actions that will help the health and the growth of the network over time. The other way is this sponsored gas, which will allow the application, actually, somebody like Trips, to cover the cost for their users for these transactions. And so we've built a very seamless way for the applications like Trips, if they want to, they can cover this cost on the behalf of their user. All right, so who's building all of this? This is the Origin team. The reason I show this slide is mostly, to be honest, for this guy, Upan. The guy in the sandals, that's probably the best way to describe it. To the right of the gentleman in the white shirt, we got a laser pointer, there we go, Upan. So Upan is one of the 6 co-founders of PayPal. He's also the first employee of YouTube. And he joined Origin very early on, and he's been behind a lot of what you guys have just seen. He built the mobile app, which will be released soon. He built the sponsored gas, and he built the messaging system, along with another team member named Micah, right there. So why does this matter? I think it's really important to ask yourself, why would somebody like Upan, who is obviously very successful, who's already built these very successful businesses that have been used by millions and millions of people across the world, why is he still working on Origin? Or why is he working on Origin? Why did he decide to come work in this space and work on the blockchain? It's because he's really, really excited about the technology. He's really excited about what this means for the future of the world, for the future of commerce. And so when you have these people that were responsible for building these amazing products that change the way everybody buys and sells online with PayPal, change the way people consume content on YouTube, it's very exciting to see, and I think it lends a lot of credibility to not only Origin, but just the entire space. When you have bright minds like this coming and working on blockchain projects, you can be confident that the development is going to continue, that the development is going to increase over time, and we're going to be able to bring these nascent technologies to the masses. And it's not just Upan, the entire team has a ton of experience. 3 other people in this picture were also very early at YouTube before they were bought by Google. So we're really excited about all of the talent that is coming from some of these more traditional companies and starting to take some risks, learn about blockchain, and start building the next internet, essentially. We've also been very fortunate to have raised money from some of the best investors throughout the world. To date, we've raised about $38 million, and we've done so from people who were angel investors in companies like Google, LinkedIn, Lyft. C. Jangler was one of the founding advisors of Uber. Gary Tan, former partner at Y Combinator. Alexis Ohanian is the founder of Reddit, the third largest site on the entire internet. So some really, really strong angel investors have gotten involved. Also, some more traditional venture capitalists, Foundation Capital in the US, as well as some very prominent crypto funds throughout the world. Pantera Capital was actually our first investor. They were very successful in this space. And as you can see, it was really important to us to raise money from people from all over the world. One of the benefits of cryptocurrencies and these blockchain projects is that they're global from day one. And so we wanted to make sure that we were getting tokens in the hands of as many people as possible from many different markets throughout the world, and people who have influence and can help spread this message to all the different parts of Asia, of Europe, of the United States, etc. We also made sure to spread out the amount that everybody invested. So rather than just getting as much money from one or two big investors as possible, we decided to instead try to maximize the number of investors that we could get, which meant we had to accept a smaller amount from each investor. So to date, we actually have over 700 investors that have participated across these 3 different fundraising rounds that we did. So we've also got quite a few partners early on, like Trips, to commit to building on Origin. And they're ready as soon as this platform is live to start using it and start building their marketplaces. Some of these have actually even kind of gotten ahead and they're a little bit impatient. They don't want to wait for us to launch. And because all of our code is open source, they just took our code and they forked it and they added their logo and they started building already. So not just, like I said, not just home sharing, we have education marketplaces, we have freelancer marketplaces, ride sharing, all sorts of different marketplaces, and we're really excited to see what gets built. We have no idea, we have some ideas about kind of the low-hanging fruit, what are the obvious ideas, but we're pretty sure there's going to be all sorts of marketplaces that we just didn't even think about from the beginning. And again, it's all open source. It's built on Ethereum. That's the blockchain that we've decided to take a large bet on. The reason for this, there's all sorts of different blockchains, yes, but the developer community for Ethereum is much larger than any other blockchain project. And so, again, there's all sorts of problems we need to solve. We want to choose the community that's large so that there are more smart minds working to solve these problems and so that we can progress more quickly. We're also using something called IPFS, which stands for the Interplanetary File System. And the idea here is you need to store as little data as possible on the blockchain itself. So what we actually do is rather than storing all the photos for a listing, all the description, all the meta information, etc., instead of storing it directly on the blockchain, you actually store it on this distributed file system called IPFS, and then you take what's called a hash, and you store the hash on the blockchain. And so it keeps the amount of data on the blockchain as small as possible, and that allows you to scale. One of the issues with Ethereum today is that it can only handle so many transactions per second, and in order for millions and millions of users to use these applications, you need it to scale. You need it to handle more transactions. So this is one way that most projects building on Ethereum have addressed this issue. But there's also many other projects that are dealing with these scaling issues and trying to get the numbers up from something like 25 transactions per second to tens of thousands of transactions per second. And there's many different ways to get involved. So of course, if you're a developer, we'd really love you to check out our code base. You can go to github.com/originprotocol. You can see everything we've built. And we really want you guys to contribute and help us build this entire framework so that many different marketplaces and companies can leverage it. Again, many of our employees that we have today started off by just finding our open source code and finding some small issues and getting involved. So that is, if you're a developer, that's how you can get involved. If you're a marketplace, if you're a business that wants to create a decentralized marketplace, or maybe you already have a centralized version of a marketplace, but you want to move it over time to become decentralized, we'd love to talk to you. Trips, they already have users, they have hosts, they have guests, and they're excited about building this out in a decentralized fashion. And these are actually probably the most exciting to us because we want real businesses, real users, rather than just a couple of kids that write white paper and want to do an ICO. Not very exciting. We want to actually help real people. So if you're a marketplace business, we really want to talk to you and understand what you need us to build in order to make your business successful. We won't be successful as a platform unless the partners that build on top of us are successful. And lastly, community members. If you have any interest in all of what we're doing, we really just want you to join. Maybe you don't know how to code, maybe you don't have a marketplace business. There's still ways for you to help. Renata, who's in the room right now, has been very helpful with translating our website and our DApp because it's global. We obviously created it in English. We're based in the United States, but we want local representatives from the community to help us make sure that this application is localized for their communities. So we're already translated to over 17 languages, and we wanted to continue to improve that as the application evolves. We want more and more people to help make sure that it is serving the local communities, in this case here in Italy. All right, I'll pause there. Any questions? Luca, did you want to weigh in and say anything?
No, maybe if you have questions or you want to do them in Italian, I can help. Se avete domande, volete farle in italiano, possiamo fare una traduzione.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Are the transactions, my understanding is the transaction are only using Ethereum, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a person with a normal credit card cannot access
Okay,
this.
got it. Yeah, so the question
Can
is,
I just ask,
yeah, sure.
dobbiamo rifare le domande o si sentono?
Sì, beh, si parla un po', sì.
Maybe you can
Repeat the question. Yeah. So the question is, what is the currency? How do you pay for these transactions? If you want to buy a listing, how are you paying for it? It's a great question. Today, we have one currency, which is Ether. It is the currency that is native to the Ethereum blockchain. And it makes it very simple. It makes it so that you don't need to trust anybody. So you send this money to a smart contract. It's held there in escrow until both parties are happy, and then it's sent to the seller. But, of course, not everybody knows what Ether is. They don't know how to use it. Another point of friction for many users. So we need to make it much more easy for people to use this. There's also another problem with a cryptocurrency in the context of a marketplace, which is it's very volatile. If you guys have noticed in the last, this year alone, the price of cryptocurrencies has dropped very significantly.
It's 52% Ethereum.
It's very, very significant drop. And this creates a major problem. If I book a home today, but I don't stay there, let's say for a month or 2 months, somebody's losing. Either I'm going to lose because the price changes, or the host is going to lose because the price changes. So in order to solve this problem, there's a couple different things that we think are going to happen. Number one, we're very excited about what are called stablecoins. And these stablecoins are pegged to some other currency. So some of the more popular ones today are pegged to a fiat currency like the US dollar or the euro. And what this guarantees is that if you pay $200 today, even if you stay there next month, the host is still getting $200 worth of cryptocurrency one way or the other. There are some other approaches these stablecoins are taking. Some are pegging them to actual cryptocurrencies. Some are using algorithms to try to keep the price stable, which is more similar to what the Federal Reserve does today in the United States for the US dollar. But ultimately, we need to ensure that if you sell your home for one night for $200, you're getting $200 worth of whatever it is. We also want to make sure to support our partners. So Trips has a currency which is based on this ERC20 standard, and our plan is to support all ERC20 tokens, ERC20 stablecoins, and our ERC20 tokens that our partners have. And lastly, Eventually, we hope that this will actually, you'll be able to just use a credit card and it'll be just a normal experience with, fiat that you're used to today on Airbnb. There are some hoops you need to jump through. It's not something that's very easy to do today, but again, many teams are working on this to make it possible. So I think that's probably the kind of sequence that we see. Today it's Ether. In the near future, it's going to be ERC20 tokens, including stablecoins, and eventually we hope to see fiat. Did you have another question?
Yes,
Yeah.
second question. It's a question for both of you.
Sure.
Where do you make the money? You said that you lower the fee,
Yes.
but my understanding is that the high fees that Airbnb or Booking.com or whoever pays is probably 1% development and the rest is advertising.
Sure.
Because there's still going to be competition
Sure.
for the marketplaces. So how can a marketplace guarantee that it's going to keep like a 2% or 5% fee if
Yep.
then it's going to find hundreds of marketplaces on the market and he has to fight for the same number of
Right.
lost in the
It's a great question. How do we make money? It's a very important question.
You get money from investors, and then you pass it to us.
It's for both of you. Really.
Yeah. So I'll start and then I'll
Yeah.
hand it off to Luca. So you're right. So the question is, how do you make money? These middlemen are charging these very high fees. We want to cut out these fees. How are we going to make money? There's basically two answers. The first answer is something that you may have heard for other cryptocurrency projects, which is these new crypto economic models. So we create, in our case, 1 billion tokens. And some of these tokens we sold to our investors, and some of these tokens we are reserving for the community. So we want to give them out to developers, we want to give them out to the early users, and try to get people to actually use these platforms. And some of these tokens we set aside for ourselves, for reserves for the company. So the idea is that as these tokens get circulated, and if you can create demand for these tokens, then you will essentially have a reserve of tokens that you can use to pay for expenses, etc. That being said, we don't want to rely on this. This model is very new and it's relatively untested, and we don't think it's smart to go all in and bank on this working. So although this is certainly part of the strategy, we also want to be open to adopting other strategies. And for us, since we're an open source project, we want to look at other examples of open source companies that have business models. So Red Hat is probably the biggest, most common or most famous example of a successful open source project. And what they do is they sell services. They go to a company that wants to build a marketplace, but they have very specific needs, right? They need 24-hour service from support from Origin. They want to work very closely with our developers to make sure they understand how this all works. They may want us to customize the marketplace for them. They may want us to build it for them. So we can charge for these services. So there are some models in the open source community that have been proven, and so we will likely use both of these strategies to make money. So regarding fees, we don't charge any fees at the protocol level. So if you go today and you buy something on our application, if you buy something for $10, or let's say one ETH, the seller will receive the entire amount that you purchased, right? That you sent to the smart contract. That being said, that means we're not charging a fee at the protocol level, but we are okay with the application that's built on top of our protocol charging fees. And the reason for this is, like I said, as these companies become bigger and bigger, your Airbnbs, they charge more and more and more and more because the users just don't have options. But in this new world, the users will have options. Many of these projects are open source, and so we think that these middlemen probably aren't going to get cut out entirely, right? There's still going to be middlemen to some degree, but it's going to be more honest. They're going to have to be able to justify their fee. So it's going to be much harder for them to justify, 20% fee when, all the code is open source and there's a lot of competition out there and it's not just one monopoly taking over the entire space. So I'll use that as a segue to hand it over to Luca so he can talk about his business model.
So if Origin is the underlying protocol and software, let's say, we will be like the Airbnb of this story. So the question is, how do we make money? So if you ask this to Airbnb, you say, how does Airbnb money? Airbnb charges a commission. So you got three players. You got the guest. The guest is the one putting the money in the circulation. There is the host and there is Airbnb. In our case, there's no more Airbnb and there is no trips in place of Airbnb because there's only guests and hosts. Trips is made of guests and hosts. So we don't want to make money. We're gonna charge a commission and this commission is not there to make profit. The commission is just there to pay expenses, right? We want to create value and the value doesn't go into extra money to give back to investors. The value will go into the tokens. So the tokens, if it's successful, will rise in price and everybody who's in will see their value grow. So I want to make money. I want Renata to make money. I want anybody who's in the network to make money, but everybody is at the same level. Maybe I will have, for sure I will have more tokens than the others because I'm the founder. But again, the money goes into the tokens. The value goes into the tokens. So we said 5%. We said 5% is just a random number in a way. Like we hope with 5% to be able to pay the costs, including the marketing costs to make this thing running. If we find out that 4% is enough, we're gonna lower it. Maybe we're gonna rise it to 6. We don't know, right? But the point here is not to make as much as possible so we can extract money and give it back to investors who want to have 100% return on their investment. We want the value to go to the network. I don't know if this answers your question. It's a completely new model and it's completely untested.
It
We try that.
Because I am currently in the same conundrum because I'm behind the project for Airbnb.
Oh,
and
thanks.
actually
Airbnb.
not,
Okay.
the purpose is not making money. but
Okay,
it's to
for
raise
Airbnb,
money
great,
for
yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
So I was curious because our idea is the same, is to keep our commission just to pay the expenses of the.
Okay, so what I'm explaining is not my idea or his idea. This is called tokenization. It's happening all over the blockchain, and I don't think Airbnb has a tokenization model.
Not yet.
All right.
We have a project run by the Venice Society in Amsterdam.
Okay.
That is to possibly build a layer of tokenization.
Okay, then that would be the same model. So if you build a tokenization layer, that will be the same model. And Origin could be actually one of the softwares you can consider to build your Airbnb. It may seem funny that I'm saying to a potential competitor to join and maybe they're stronger and bigger. It's fine. Let's say that's also very interesting. Let's say that Airbnb is much more organized than the trips, and in 6 months you're gonna do what we are talking about. Well, just in case, or maybe somebody else comes in with a lot of money. It doesn't matter. If myself, the founder of Trips, I see one project coming in doing better than Trips, I'll buy some tokens and I'm in 100%. Maybe I'm gonna help them if possible, or maybe not, but it doesn't matter. This is not Booking versus Airbnb. I am not with a team. The more people come in, the more we are, all of us, stronger. And this is so new that it's very hard to see where this is going. But I think it's just much better when it's, the final interest is not the investors.
Yeah.
Or the investors are everybody.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I'd like to just talk a little bit more about that because exactly what Lucas said. Airbnb's goal is to extract more and more money out of the network, out from the users, from the pockets of the guests and the hosts, and return it to its investors. They have a fiduciary responsibility to do this, right? The partners that we've talked to and signed up early, like Trips, there's another one called WeHome in Korea that focuses on traditional Korean homes and giving guests a traditional Korean experience. they want to lower their fees as they get bigger and more popular. They want, to provide this more as a service, as a a common good for the people, for the users, not to just get rich, right? They want their hosts and their guests to benefit from this. And the more that they can invest into their guests and hosts, the better. So it's actually, opposite motivation. Ideally, you get your fees as low as possible. If it's possible to operate with a 0% transaction fee, then you will. And I think, we think this is possible. There are many other ways to add value to this transaction rather than taking a percentage of the cost, right? You can provide insurance, you can provide dispute resolution, something that people will want to pay for, they'll gladly pay for it. But you're not just saying, hey, I found you, buyer, I found you seller, give me 20%. That's basically what's happening today. So we're excited about these local, small communities that really care about the users and don't want to try to extract as much money from these users, but rather provide them with more and more value over time. So I think this conceptually is what this type of platform, this type of technology, and what this crypto economic model can actually incentivize these new projects to do.
I don't want to monopolize.
Keep coming, more questions, yeah.
I have a very technical question for you. As you know, in Italy is nightmare to make business, especially if you want to work in accommodation. There are new rules. You have to collect tourist taxes. You have even to cedolare secca to collect taxes on behalf of the host and stuff like that. How does this sector grow? Because you are operating in Italy, aren't you? You're an Italian company.
No. No. First of all, we are not even a company at the moment. I mean, I have a company myself, but it's not the trips.
Repeat the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so regulation, this is Italy.
Yeah,
So
sure.
everything before you even start a business, you start worrying about taxes and regulation. That's why many businesses die before they even born. And that's the unfortunate situation here. That's why I've been like an entrepreneur in this space for 17 years and I've never been one day in Italy with this business because you can't just work here. I mean, you can, but then you are just compromising right and left. So we're gonna open a company, or we won't open a company here. We're gonna open a company in a crypto-friendly country. That could be Malta, could be Estonia, could be Switzerland, and so on. Because we're actually planning to do some token sales later on. And so the company behind Trips is not going to be Italian, and we are going to start in Italy in terms of hosts and listings, but we are actually planning to expand, and we will not deal with every different country's regulation. We will try, we are removed from this. It's the host's responsibility to take care of his own, regulations. And it's a bit like, if you ask me about cedolare secca, which is the one Airbnb ignored, and I don't know, we'll see when we get there, because it still takes time, and this law has been completely ignored by Airbnb. And well, actually not being in Italy, we wouldn't be actually supposed to do it. It depends. So we'll see this when it happens, okay?
And also the tourist tax.
Tourist tax is not Airbnb responsibility, it's the host's responsibility.
Some cities are forced.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I don't think they forced, I think they reached an agreement. So some cities reached an agreement. We are, well, that's a bit a long discussion. It could be like the city of, I don't know, Florence, so maybe said, Airbnb, you must pay the taxes or you're out of here. And they could actually kick Airbnb out. They probably wouldn't be able to kick us out because they're not there. Everything on the blockchain is much harder to stop. So I guess we'll see case by case, but in general, we try to be as much removed as possible from that. And we just provide a protocol and people work on it. Another important aspect is localization. We are not deciding anything from an office. Let's say this happens in Rome. We're gonna let people in Rome from Trips decide about that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this goes back to the single point of failure, right? When you have these laws, if there is one company to go after, it makes it much easier for the government to enforce it, right? If the government instead has to go knock on every door of every host, they're less likely to enforce it. So it's not that we're, encouraging people to break the law or anything. We just don't think that at the protocol layer, at the technology layer, that these things should be decided. It's up to, the hosts in this case, it's up to the people building on top and taking advantage of this technology to, follow their local laws, pay their taxes, etc. But today, it's all combined. Something like Airbnb, it's the host, it's the application, it's the technology, and the government just simply has to go to one company and say, you're going to be in trouble if you don't do X, Y, and Z. And we don't think that's good for the user.
Renata has a question too.
Was not a question.
Oh.
I was thinking about, in a sort of way, is a distributed environment and is a distributed economy. So what I see in the future is a distributed partnership. So we are focusing for example, in Trip, in providing a good solution for customer, for guests as a host, or a host, or selecting good hosts as guests, and this probably may be the main focus. But we how to say in English? We let people participate and putting their specialization, verticalization. So if taxis is a sort of service that is upon trips, why not? Does it make any sense? Did I explain
It's
myself?
very, yeah.
It's a sort of, so in Florence, the ticket tax is in a way, in Venice is another problem, and so on.
Yes, I'm saying it because taxes and tourist taxes, beside
It's a mess.
is a mess, but they are services. Yeah, so they convert into services for the residents. So I think that it's very important that these communities that you're going to build locally are aware that the system shouldn't be exploited to extract money, but to keep as much money locally, because the tax you pay locally converting services for the residents.
Right.
Imagine you are a homeowner from London who owns a house in Venice and rent the house to somebody from Tokyo and use a system that is completely decentralized and where nobody pays taxes locally.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is something that, in my opinion, is one of the main problems that Airbnb has contributed
Got
to
it.
create, and is one of the main problems behind gentrification and touristification because buildings are a finite resource.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important that it's really eye-opening and interesting what you both explained. Very important itself, build his own code of values and reflects something that Airbnb has never done unless with a gun pointed to the head on the effect it's going to have to the communities.
There's two things to be said here. So first of all, Airbnb was actually encouraging not following the law. Like, New York was very clear you couldn't do it, and it encouraged because they need to make money. That's the final result. And the second thing is they are a global company, but it's a centralized company. So every decision about every city in the world was taken probably in the same office, right? In our case now, white paper, we have a process which is listing approval. So you just upload a listing and it goes live. You upload it and the network will approve it, and it's gonna be localized. So if the main players in Milan from Trips decide that Milan deserves to have only legal listings and they have the means to check it because they are in Milan, then they will only approve the legal listings, and then Milan solved Milan's problem, not me or anybody else. So every city will decide by itself, and it's completely, the decision is not taken centralized. What we can do is to facilitate with software, this part. So I'm aware of what you're saying, that the solution has to be local.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing with Airbnb. It's a local solution for Venice, I guess, and
Yes,
maybe another cities.
we provide the service of vetting
There you are.
projects
No,
and,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
which is going to be auctioned because we don't have the technology. Because
Yeah.
usually, I mean,
Sure.
past this century technology, we're just going to have people vetting papers and stuff like
All right.
that.
There you are. Well, that's a bit the point. How can Airbnb prove that every host is legal when in every city, in every country, there's different laws? Are they going to see all the papers? How can they do that? They cannot do that, right? So
Well, considering they make like 100 millions a year in Venice, they probably could invest in a couple of people.
yeah, well, then they're not, yeah, of course, it's true, but they don't have the interest of it. Yeah. The moment they start checking, the 100 millions becomes 20 millions, right? So they don't want to check. Right? Maybe we
Alright.
can go with a
Yeah.
good example.
Any other questions?
With the space.
Alright. Okay, so very quickly, just to finish up here, just going to show a real example of something on Origin here. So it's my first time in Italy. I needed a place to stay here in Venice, and Luca and his team at Trips have done a great job of putting a lot of listings for their properties up on Origin. So I went ahead, I found this listing here in Venice. Looks beautiful. It's got a nice little garden, and it's listed here. You can see it's in Ipfs. And so I went ahead and decided, hey, I want to purchase this home for a night and stay here. The idea again is we want this experience to be very similar to what you're used to on Airbnb. So next, this is MetaMask. This is what we talked about as one of the friction points here. It's this little pop-up here. It's a little bit hard to read, but right here is gas fee. This is the cost, not for the actual stay, which is down here, but for just the transaction itself. So I get this pop-up. It also takes some time to confirm the transaction. It doesn't happen instantly because the way Ethereum works, it takes some time to ensure that each transaction is legitimate. But again, working on solving the many problems for this issue. And once I have confirmed, then Luca went ahead and started to message me using the chat system. Said, hey, thank you for booking. I'm going to send you all the details. Here's what you need to know for check-in, etc. So I can feel more comfortable about who I'm dealing with on the other end of this transaction. And we also see here transaction states. So I made an offer. That was the first thing. And he can decide, okay, I'm going to accept this offer. And so once he accepts the offer, the Ether that I used to purchase is now in a smart contract. And it will stay in this smart contract until both of us have said it's okay to release the funds to the host. So if I have an issue, I can't get in, I can't stay there, or I didn't think it was represented properly on the marketplace, I can enter into a dispute. A third party can arbitrate and make a decision on what happens. But it's important to understand this currency, this ETH, is in the smart contract. I, as a guest, cannot do anything to take that money out. Luca, as a host, cannot do anything to take that money out. Even Origin. Origin can't go in there and say, okay, let's just release the funds. Let's just give it to Luca. It needs to be within the smart contract. The smart contract, the code, ultimately will make the decision. So that is one of the new benefits of using these decentralized technologies, as you really can trust the code, and no person can come in and just say, oh, we're just going to take all the money out of here, and you guys are screwed. So the final step, whenever the transaction is complete, is for me to say, okay, I have stayed here, the sale is completed, I'm going to leave a review because we want to make sure the next guests can understand how this host did. And as soon as that happens, then the funds will be released from the smart contract and sent to the host. So it's very early. This is very much a basic marketplace, very basic system today. And a lot of these solutions, things like reputation, identity, escrow, at Origin, we are providing what we're calling a smart default. We want to give you an option. You want to use our reputation system, our escrow system, you can. But maybe you don't want to. Maybe you have your own very specific needs because your marketplace, has, whatever. They need a very specific reputation system, or their escrow is very complex and they want to make sure that they, that their users understand when and why and how their money is released. They can plug that in. We want to provide optionality. Again, it's all open source, and we will give them an option, but they can definitely use their own smart contract, or perhaps a third party, trusted third party that both the buyer and the seller agree, to use for dispute resolution or reputation or whatever the case may be. So that's it. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, we got another question here? Sure, no problem.
Just for my understanding, so in the real application, I would start with Trips. Trips will be converted into Ethereum, and then Ethereum, and then...
Not exactly. So Trips it's based on, again, this ERC20 standard, which is built on top of Ethereum. So it is compatible already with...
So it's not real transaction then?
Exactly. You wouldn't convert necessarily Trips to Ether. You would just send Trips, and I would collect Trips in my wallet. And now that's what I would get. And it may be, it may be a stable coin. It may be a different type of token. And one thing to keep in mind here is that it's possible that there's actually going to be many tokens involved. It may not just be one token. It could be, that they pay with half Trips and half Ether. There might be some other tokens involved. For example, there are blockchain projects working on dispute resolution systems that have their own token involved, right? So just like when you go to Amazon today, you click a button because you see something you want and it's sent to your house. You don't really know all of the things that are happening in the background. There are many services involved in order to get that good from the warehouse to your doorstep. But you don't need to know that, right? You click a button, you get what you want. So we actually envision that even though there may be many tokens involved in the background, you as a user, you don't really need to know. And we'll probably, again, it's really hard to calculate 0.5 ETH. What am I spending? What is it? How much is this out of my pocket? And what is this going to be next week or next month? So it's more likely that you're actually going to see your local currencies, right? You're going to see, €100 per night or whatever the case may be. And then in the background, maybe it's doing some conversions and sending him however many Trips or Ether or whatever. But you as a user, you just know it's €100 a night, and that's all you need to know. And as a host, I'm going to make $100 per night. That's all I need to know.
You still have to pay with a wallet of crypto.
It's all, yeah, exactly. It's all still, it's important that everything happens on the blockchain. That's how you're able to ensure that, it's called a trustless system. I don't even really need to trust Luke on the other end. I just know that this smart contract works the way it does. I put in Ether, it's going to send it under these conditions to the host. That's all I need to know, right? I don't even really need to trust the host and worry about,
But to be successful, we have to get to the point where the guest pays with credit card and the host gets euro in his bank account.
Exactly.
Nobody here thinks that tomorrow everybody's going to accept crypto. In the background, yes, crypto, but to have a really mature system, you need fiat currency, maybe for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, we don't know that. So we are aware we need to deal with fiat. And there are companies, so they may build this, or there are actually blockchain companies dealing specifically with this problem. They just provide you can accept now credit cards on your blockchain project. You plug to them, you pay them a fee, and then that's why we have 5%.
Is Ipfs going to do this?
Yeah, as soon as we are on the market and this is possible, yes. If we only accept Ether or Bitcoin, whatever, we are doomed unless we are freezed for 5 or 10 years. So we need that, and everybody in the blockchain project knows that. So there's gonna be a period of few years where fiat and crypto are gonna be live together.
Coming to your website.
Credit card.
Credit card. Behind the scene, buying some trips.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The trips are sent to the host.
No, the host gets euro again.
Well, yeah, but
Euro.
I think you're right. So you pay the credit card, And in the background, it's converting it to trips,
Yeah.
sending the trips to the, and then convert it back. Exactly.
And
So I understand how you charge my credit card, so
Mm.
it's gonna be a super
Right.
service, but are you gonna convert back into euros or dollars? Or
It's, you know, it's up to the host too, right? It's very likely that, you know, they may want to actually keep the currency. Sometimes some of these systems will incentivize the users to transact in the native currency instead of fiat, right? And you can actually make more money by keeping it in the currency instead of converting it. Or lose more, sure, yeah, depending on the volatility. But yeah, and look, this is very new. A lot of this is still being figured out. But I think what's important to realize is the community is aware of the issues. We're aware that people need to feel comfortable transacting in fiat, and there are a lot of very smart teams working on ways to do this so that the user doesn't even have to worry about it.
So are these services already available?
Yes, they are. There are what are called decentralized exchanges, and they are available and they are live. There are certain, you know, it's not too simple. For example, in order for these decentralized exchanges to flourish and to become mainstream, there needs to be liquidity. There needs to be a lot of money moving through the system so that, you know, you don't have to pay this giant fee to make these conversions. There's also local, you know, there's government regulations that each platform will have to take into consideration. So it's not quite as simple as we hope it will be in the future. But the point is, they're solvable problems. The technology can and will solve these problems over time.
in 2001, when I started my first online booking system, there was no PayPal. There was no way to cash money online. So my customers would simply write an email and promise that they come, go to Prague, pay the owner, and then I would go to Prague and get cash. And then it changed, it evolved. So these are problems today. Today we are really early. It's like trying to do, in our case, Airbnb in '96, and it takes a minute to download one picture. So you can't do this, but you know, you start.
When is trips going to launch?
We hope to have a demo by April, which means Origin is building that. We don't even do anything.
Yeah,
We're very lazy.
they're waiting on us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we hope to have this white label product I talked about live in Q1 of next year. So hopefully no later than March, hopefully a little bit earlier, but it's still TBD.
And this is demo. Before actual people can use it, I think it's years. Could be 2 years, could be 3 years, could be 5, we don't know. Before it really gets easy. So it's gonna be like early
Early
adopters who know that people who now have Bitcoin or Ethereum, they're gonna jump into it maybe because it's cheaper, and then slowly it's gonna be mainstream. It's a long-term project.
Yeah, we're thinking about it long term. The projects that will be successful are thinking about this in the long term. They don't expect to have a thriving business tomorrow built on the blockchain. They know a lot of problems to solve. A lot of these problems will take time, but they're thinking 3, 5, 10 years ahead, and they're putting in the work now and starting to solve these problems now.
And what about the others? I mean, the big companies, what are they doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what is Airbnb doing to address this? How are they thinking about
I don't know
blockchain?
yet about it.
So one interesting thing to take into consideration is that very recently the founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky, went to the SEC in the United States, and he asked, how can we give equity to our hosts? He understands that these new token economic models are changing the way that the incentive structures work. They're allowing the hosts to actually benefit from the health and the growth of these networks. And he's trying to figure out ways to kind of replicate this in a more centralized way. So they're definitely thinking about it. The difficult thing for a company as big as Airbnb is they are a very large company. It's like trying to, take a very, very large ship that's moving very quickly and turn it 90 degrees, right? So it's a threat to their model, but Airbnb is not going to want to be decentralized. They are making a ton of money from being centralized. They're making a ton of money from hoarding your data, from siloing your data and protecting that data and monetizing that data. They're making a ton of money from inserting themselves into the middle of these transactions and extracting as much money as possible as they can. So it's commonly referred to as the Innovators Dilemma, right? You can ask yourself, why did Hilton not build Airbnb? Why did the taxi company not build Uber? And it's because they're simply making too much money off of their existing business model, and they just can't move quickly enough and adapt to this new way of thinking.
It's really hard. I mean, Airbnb is really smart, and they're looking at it, and this thing proves it. And but it's a completely different change. It's like saying, let's not make money anymore. Let's make tokens valuable. I mean, you have investors behind who probably invested in 100 companies and 99 failed, and Airbnb is successful. And you tell them, I want to do the tokenization. They go like, what? I mean, I'm counting on you for my return, and they're gonna fight it. And I think there's already a tension between what Chesky is trying to do and their investors. Chesky is very smart, and he understands companies are changing. The 21st century companies, in his own words, are different. They share more with the network, but will he be able to do that? Maybe. If he does, well, we kind of solve the problem. Just by pushing it.
Exactly.
Airbnb is going to be decentralized and tokenized. Well,
And we win.
we go home.
Yeah.
We won. So either way, we win in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Really appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming out and listening to me and Luca. And yeah, if you guys want to learn more about what we are up to at Origin, here's some links. You can go to our website, originprotocol.com. All of our codes on github.com/originprotocol. We also use Discord to do all of our communication and our collaboration. Really encourage you to come join the conversation, ask your questions there, and get the answers from us and from the community. And we also do a weekly public engineering call that anybody is able to join. So every week on Wednesday, I think it's around maybe 8 o'clock or so
8 o'clock here
in Europe. For an hour or so, we talk about what we're working on this week, what products we're building, what are our priorities, and we hear from the community, and people are able to introduce themselves and say hello. So it's all out in the open. And again, we want you to participate, to contribute, and to help us, drive these decisions and make these product decisions for the long term. And then you want to talk about how they can learn more about Trips?
Yep, Trips, you go in tripscommunity.com. I would guess the best way to actually understand is read the white paper. It's in Italian or English, and you get all the information you need, and then you can dig deeper into that. We do meetings too, like at the end of November we are in Venice for a weekend. Everybody can join, even just for a day. So people will come from other cities to stay. And but we have meetings around, not in Florence and other places, planned, not in Venice, apart from this one. And then we have Discord, which is like Slack. It's like a chat where you can actually come in and work, do something. And whatever you do, you get translation or help with something, or talking about trips in some ways. You can get, at the end of the month, you get trips in your wallet. They don't have any value, but you are betting on the potential value of this. And there you are. I think that's it. Oh yeah, and then we are actually launching a crowdfunding, and we are now asking people to promise a certain amount of money, which is the minimum 500 euro for the crowdfunding we're going to do next year. So if you like the project and you want to join, in the crowdfunding, you can now just fill in a form and say, promise a certain amount, and you are in the crowdfunding before the public.
Cosa vuol dire promessa di investimento esattamente? Dicono in italiano,
ti metti, vuoi investire, non lo puoi fare ancora perché il crowdfunding non c'è, e ti impegni moralmente, non legalmente, a investire. Se poi sparisci, non ti corriamo dietro, però non c'è niente. He's saying, what do you mean by promise?
Yeah.
This is Italy. If you promise and you don't pay, you know what's going to happen. Concrete shoes.
Yeah, concrete shoes.
In Venice there's more
Promessa
than
di
enough.
pagare non suona bene in Italia, però. Già non pagano, non sono i contratti, figurati su quelle promesse.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you again.
We're going for dinner now. Anybody wants to join? We're open.
Sì.
Li ho messi qua.
Stop this.
Cool. Yeah.
Se volete i bigliettini sono in tavola.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, really appreciate it. Definitely. Thank you.
Oh.
Ciao, grazie. Ci sentiamo. Grazie.
Ciao. Grazie a chi è da casa, eravamo in tanti in effetti, quindi c'era gente. È strano, c'era gente. Grazie a tutti e chiudiamo. Ciao.
Posso scrivere? Scrivo Luca.